A 22-year-old black man by the name of Anthony Wall has been charged with resisting arrest and disorderly conduct following prom night, where he took his sister to the prom as her date. And then later they ended up at a Waffle House where apparently they got into some sort of verbal altercation with some people at the restaurant, and then police were called. Now, when the cops showed up, it's unclear how or why it escalated to what you're about to see. But what you're about to see is difficult to watch. Take a look at the police officer handling the situation and actually escalating it far further than it needed to. Take a look.
You're on stand there on the fucking window.
He's not supposed to be doing
that. Out from me.
I'm glad I'm recording this. He's not supposed to be doing that. He's not supposed to be doing that.
Get your hands off me. Get your hands off me. Get your supervisor out here and get your hands off. Get your supervisor out here and get your hands off me.
He's not supposed to be putting his hands on me.
So luckily, this didn't end with someone dying, which unfortunately oftentimes is the case with police brutality stories. But Anthony Wall told the press, WTVD, that he was pretty much trying to scream for air and trying to breathe because he was holding my throat, which you could clearly see in that video. And that's when I got aggressive with him because you are choking me, Wall said. Now, he said he wasn't resisting arrest. He had his hands up and he was trying to get him to stop grabbing his throat. Look, I want to show you a photo, and I believe we have this picture showing the police department. Now, this is in North Carolina, and the police department had a group photo where you can see how big this cop is, and he's giant. Like, he's towering over all the other police officials. And we're talking about a pretty thin 22-year-old guy. Who's being handled this way. It's just unnecessary. Now, the police department, this is the Warsaw police chief. He says, we're currently investigating the whole incident, interviewing witnesses and gathering additional video. We have also reached out to the district attorney's office to make him aware of the investigation. Once the investigation is complete and the district attorney has had a chance to review the case, we will provide the public with an update on the findings.
Yeah, so you're right, Anna, he's 22. So, he's wearing a tuxedo. This reminds me of the story just from earlier this week of the woman who's at Yale and she's sleeping in the common area because she's working all night on a paper. She's a graduate student there and she has the cops called on her. What do you have to do, right? Because a lot of times people say, well, if you're wearing a nice suit, I've said this in the past, like put on a nice jacket and you can go into almost anywhere if you're not black or a minority, right? So now I can. I'm a minority. I'm brown, but I don't get that discrimination. I just don't. So that's my privilege, okay? But if you're black, you can go to Yale. Doesn't help you. You can have a tuxedo on. It doesn't help you. So can you not see the frustration of minorities in this country as they say, what do I need to do? I mean, you said do this, I did it. You said do that, I did it. And I still get choked out on a Waffle House. So now this is the second Waffle House incident. If you remember, there was a young woman, 25-year-old. And in both cases where the cops threw her to the ground, her tube top fell off, so her breasts were exposed, and she was manhandled, etc. So both instances, an employee calls the cops and says, they're bothering me, you gotta get them out. What was the earlier one about? She had asked for a plastic utensils and they wanted to charge her 50 cents, which I've never heard of. And so she was like, really, it's just a plastic fork? God said, cops, get her out of here, right? So now here's the thing. And in the Yale case, I said, to me, the cops did not do any of this stuff in Yale, right? And they were put in a little bit of a tough situation. But when you're the cops and you come in, whether in both of the Waffle House cases, including this one, when you get there, can you try to de-escalate something for the first time in your life? Why everything has to end with choking up against the wall, being slammed down, etc. Can you just come in and go, hey, I get it, you guys were having a fight, right? And it's, by the way, it wasn't even a physical fight, it's just verbal, they were disagreeing. Hey guys, let's walk outside and you tell me what the employee did that you think was wrong, and the employee, I'll talk to you later, etc. And let's just straighten this out. No, our police are trained, be vicious first, be vicious second, be vicious third. So And you got a minority, they could be dangerous. They could be dangerous. He's in a tux, doesn't look dangerous, looks like they went to the prom. Doesn't matter, whatever you do, show them who's boss. And if they disrespect you, who cares what the original incident was? Make sure you slam them to the ground, because the biggest crime in America is disrespecting a police officer. And we don't even know if that happened here, but that's certainly a good enough excuse for them to take action like this most of the time.
Yeah, I just wanted to also add something about how, for some reason, we've gotten to this point where everything needs to escalate quickly. Every situation, every disagreement, every conflict needs to escalate. And it just hit me as you were talking, Cenk. I used to work at a coffee shop. And when people want their coffee and they want it a specific way and they don't get it a specific way, sometimes they get angry. And so when I used to be a barista, this one woman, after remaking her drink for her 3 different times, was still unhappy with her drink. And you know what she did with her latte? She threw it at me. She literally threw hot latte all over me, right? And so in today's world, she'd get shot or something at some point, right? But you know what happened? The manager came in and told her, you need to get out right now, out. No cops were called, it didn't escalate from there. Yes, I was upset, right? But no one needs to get, to a point where someone gets physically hurt because of someone losing their temper. And that's essentially what keeps happening time and time again in all these stories.
And keep it real. If that's a rich person in LA, a white woman throwing latte at you, there ain't no cops and she's not gonna get arrested. Now, say that she's an African-American young man or woman and throws latte or coffee, hot coffee at someone, you think the cops aren't gonna be called and you think there isn't going to be violence. Is that what you think? You don't live in this country if that's what you think.
Right. Well, I just want to say, because I feel like it's the same story over and over again. I just saw a video, I think Sean King posted, of a elderly black woman who was being escorted out of her car by 5 or 6 cops, and they grabbed her. Going to his page sometimes is just stressful because you see it over and over again. What I want to say is a couple of things. Where are all of the white people, the activists? Where are you speaking up against this? Because what I do see is like the NAACP says this. So it's just black people continuously talking about the ghost that nobody believes that exists. Because that young black man, if you read the comments underneath it, he deserved it because he was talking back to a cop. And it is a continuous thing that we see daily. So what I say is every opportunity that I get to speak, I'm going to tell people of color, stop spending money in the businesses that continuously call the dogs on you and treat you like animals. Every single one of you. You talk about Waffle House. Why do black people continue to go to Waffle House? Because they're poor and that's where they can afford to go. After prom, it's open late. The food doesn't cost a lot of money. And unfortunately, they go there and this is how they're treated. And it gets old. It gets old because that white woman that was talking to the cops and she cursed at them, and that video went viral because they had pulled her children over, was not arrested, was not touched. Reese Witherspoon told the police officer, "Do you know who I am?" Right. And he backed up off of her. But apparently that's not something that we are afforded. So what do we need to do is take our dollars and stop putting it into the businesses that treat us like we're subhuman. And I'm talking to Latinos and brown people alike, because a lot of us like to say we're not like the black people. We're not like, yes, we are. When they see us the same. And if you don't think they're treating minorities, Latinos like that, those undocumented immigrants that live in Tennessee, there are many of them, they can't even have a run-in with the police. So what I'm saying is, we sound like broken records. Those cops, they come with aggression, they choke that boy out, they grab that old lady by the neck. We continue to see this. Let's take our dollars and put them elsewhere, because we do not need to keep putting money in the hands of our oppressors.
Right. There have been calls for a boycott of Waffle House. And NAACP and other representatives from other organizations have called for a similar sort of training around race issues for employees at Waffle House as well. But I think the issue is is something else, and it's to the root of what you were talking about, Aida. It's the way that Black people's bodies are criminalized, and it's something I talked about earlier this week. Khalil Gibran Muhammad has this book called Condemnation of Blackness, and he goes through the very intentional policies that were put into place to criminalize Black bodies that also go hand in hand with laws. So what do law enforcement do? They intentionally try to either kill or arrest Black people because it's been a part of their centuries-long thinking. And even, Malcolm X became very famous in the 1950s for leading a whole procession of Harlemites to the police department where a very brutalized member of the Nation of Islam who was not doing anything was detained and not sent to the hospital because of police brutality injuries. So, this has been going on for a long time, and even to the point where, listening to Darren Wilson's responses about what had happened the night or the day of Michael Brown's murder, they asked him if they could see he was carrying a weapon. And he said, yes, his body. So that should tell you everything about how law enforcement looks at Black people's bodies and how they respond, unfortunately, with extreme excessive force to the point where this kid, I know he's 22, but this kid is saying the very words that Eric Garner said his last words in 2016.
So Gerald Griggs, among others, is organizing both hashtag Boycott Waffle House and a sit-in on May 12th, which harkens back to the civil rights era. So that's a good movement. Your point about Reese Witherspoon, Ida, really struck me because I thought, my God, could you imagine if when Reese Witherspoon said, "Do you know who I am?" the cop took her and slammed her to the ground? Mm-hmm. It's unimaginable, right? Right. But that happens to Black people all the time in this country. Right?
What Mel Gibson's anti-Semitic rant?
And what he called a female officer, and the whole time he's just escorted like, oh, okay, everything's fine. They never beat the crap out of him. They treat him with kid gloves, and it goes on. Now, the other part you mentioned, Ida, about hey, well, he talked back to the cop. Remember the Bundy Ranch guys?
Yeah, exactly.
Not only did they talk back to the cops and yell at them, they threatened to murder them, and then they pointed guns at the cops, kid gloves. So, oh my God, they let him stay in that Oregon compound for how many days, how many weeks, right? And then finally one of them finally got shot because he gets out of the car after he said he would murder cops, starts walking towards the cops with a gun, and they're like, okay, fine, finally, right? And everyone else in the car, if those guys are Black and it's a normal situation, they shoot that whole car up. They're not taking any chances. Those guys all said they would murder the cops, right?
That's right.
And instead, they shoot that one guy and that's it, and everybody else, and by the way, you know what happened to those Bundy Ranch guys? They're free to go now.
Yep.
They're out of jail, okay? Now forget jail, they won. It's unbelievable, the difference that you see in this country. So one side is allowed to threaten the murder of cops and go, how dare you impinge on my American rights?
Have killed them too. Actually, there was a white man that's killed 2 cops before, and there is no story. There's no story out on this.
Coverage.
Yeah, and on the other hand, if you say, hey, can you not choke me on the night of my prom? They're like, no, boom, and just slam him down, etc. So, and for the companies and the restaurants, et cetera, there's a right way to handle this and a wrong way. Starbucks, I think, handled it the right way. They're shutting down all their stores on May 29th. They're talking about implicit bias training. Understand, hey, we're not calling all of our employees racist. All we're saying is we're training you on all the implicit bias that we all have as Americans, and now they're allowing people to use the bathrooms, et cetera, et cetera. You could say it's not enough or whatever you want to say about it, but at least they're responding and they're taking action and they're doing something bold about it. So far, Waffle House, I haven't heard a thing. And so when your employees, it is about you, right? Yep. When your employees constantly call the cops on Black customers who quote unquote disagree with them and have the cops manhandle them, that is your issue. And if you don't fix that, then Ida's right and the sit-ins are right to say, that's on you, and and look, I like Waffle House. Like I've talked about it on the show before. I like going. I like the food, but if you're going to treat Americans like this, I'm not going. So far, I haven't heard anything from Waffle House to fix this situation. Maybe they don't think it's a thing that they need to fix. No. Well, then word to the wise on whether you want to go to a Waffle House. 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below. Then you're a TYT subscriber, and second is ring the bell.
And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.